Okay, well, now let's go ahead and welcome our speaker for today, Marilyn Holloway.
Thank you, everyone, and good morning, and happy Father's Day to all the fathers here. And acknowledging my own father, I didn't feel particularly close to him growing up, but then in recent years I've realized how much he empowered me by giving me all kinds of opportunities, like learning how to sail a boat, and letting me have riding lessons, and letting me sail my boat off into the wild blue yonder, and having that confidence to empower me. So thank you, Dad, on this Father's Day. And also happy solstice. It's also solstice today, so a day of celebration. So our theme this month has been imagination. And, you know, imagination can take us lots of places. It can take us into our wildest dreams, and it can take us into fear and prejudice and all kinds of ugly places that we'd rather not go. But sometimes we find ourselves going there. So let's explore imagination and find how it can take us to places beyond our wildest dreams. And I'd like to invite you to think back as children. What did you do as children with your imaginations? And I can tell you that one of my things was going under the dining table, getting a big blanket or something and covering the dining table. I think it must have been with the help of my mom and my grandma or something, and then making a den under the dining table. That was one of the great things that I like to do. And there's actually a little poem from Robert Louis Stevenson's son about kids making a den on the stair, like they made a ship. And it's, we built a ship upon the stairs, all made of the back bedroom chairs, and sailed it on the ocean billows, and filled it full of sofa pillows to go a-sailing on the billows. And Tom said, should we also take an apple and a slice of cake? We sailed along for days and days and had the very best of plays. But Tom fell out and hurt his knee, so there was no one left but me. So it shows you where childish imagination can take us. And when we get to stairs, I remember I had this friend across the street, Sally, and she had a little sister, Susan, and my younger sister, Vicky, and I used to play with them. And we did have a game on the stairs at their house. They had a Victorian house with really nice stairs. They wouldn't let us slide down the banisters, but we were pretending to climb up. We were explorers climbing up beside a waterfall. So yeah, imagination can take us on adventures. And you think of, playing pretend as children. I remember let's play fairies and witches, and let's pretend to be this or that. So it's kind of like, and you see it with little animals as well, they are playing pretend, learning how to be adults and how to function in the adult world. And then as we get into young adulthood, we tend to leave that pretend time behind, but we get into daydreaming, sometimes about our future career, or sometimes we're imagining, especially girls, what our future romance might be, the knight in shining armor who's going to come and sweep us off our feet, which usually doesn't work too well. Yeah. So anyway, sometimes it does, to give it a chance. And the real world closes in, and there's pressures to earn, to build, to raise a family, and it can all seem like we've killed that imagination dead. But the spirit still seeks to know and to understand and to step forth in adventure. And this is where the curious, inquisitive, imaginative mind helps us to see both further outwards and further inwards, and into the greatness of imagination. So imagination can be quirky, playful, and inventive. It can lead us into delusion, fear, and prejudice, as we mentioned before. Or it can open us up to see with new eyes and understand with open hearts. And this takes me to sci-fi. Sci-fi writers such as Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein, Jules Verne, turn myself off, here we go. Jules Verne, who wrote 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, H.G. Wells, who wrote War of the Worlds, Arthur C. Clarke, Isaac Asimov. And interestingly enough, each of those writers was inspired to write by some thoughts and ideas that were going around in scientific circles at that time. But they extrapolated from that and went off into these flights of fancy. But from those flights of fancy, there were then scientists later on that took those ideas and brought some of them into reality. And I think, I can't remember the exact details, but I think from Arthur C. Clarke, some of the ideas, helping to launch missions to the moon and stuff like that have happened. So it's kind of like they imagined some of these things that help the next generation to launch them into being and to take the imagination even further. So the flow seems to go in both directions, from the ideas that are coming out in science to the imagination of the writer and back to science again to bring it into actuality. So there's the what if, there's the imagination of what if. What if we could light our homes without candles? What if I could mix a couple of elements together and come up with something totally new and hopefully not explosive? What if has led to all kinds of experiments and creations? I keep rubbing against that little thing and turning my thing off. And also, imagination can lead us into empathy and compassion. I want you to think about this for a moment. When we see somebody who is suffering, we somehow can imagine or feel their pain. We might see it in our, visually. I'm going to hold this thing and, there we go, and make sure it stays open. We might actually see it, what they're experiencing in our mind's eye. We might feel it. I think more often we feel it, sometimes to the extent that we actually feel that physical pain. But this is a wonderful gift of imagination that can lead us into empathy and compassion. And we sense that, as I said, not just visually, but with all our senses. So we can open ourselves to the full range of imagination, which includes all the senses, or we can close down. And sometimes we choose to close down.
I don't think it's you.
I don't think it's me. I think this is being a bit wonky. And maybe it's the battery.
Do you want the microphone?
Yeah, sure. Let me just take this off. There we go. Turn this off. There we go. That's better. Can you hear me now? Yes. So we can open to further to our imagination, or we can close down. So it's up to us. And have you ever experienced somebody saying to you, well, that's just in your imagination? I know I have. I think most of us have, especially as children. And that tends to close us down as well. But often, what is to imagine that is dismissed as rational, but it is a valuable gift. So even though somebody says, that's just in your imagination, what you were given in your imagination might have been a clue to lead you further. And so if somebody else is dismissing it, don't just dismiss it for yourself. I think it's an essential gift, in fact. It opens us up to infinite possibilities. And in New Thought, there's this whole idea that we can, through our imagination, manifest what we want. And there was this book and then a movie called The Secret that came out that explored this a bit further. But I know that's good, but I would say there is a little caveat there, that sometimes what we're trying to manifest is what we want with our ego. And that doesn't usually turn out too well. I think most of us might have experienced where we have made something come into being, and then it turned out to be not so good, and then we wanted to back out of it, or we had to change. And it was kind of, maybe we needed to do that in order to learn the lesson that that's not what we needed to do. But rather, if we allow, it's more like a sense of allowing. If we allow that imagination to open us up to what we need, then I think the universe steps up and provides us what we want, what we need, not so much what we want, but what we need. And to me, the very precious gift of imagination is not so much making things come into being, but rather opening up to the infinite possibility. So it's not a force of our own personal will, but a visualization of possibility. Rather, it's I will sit quietly with a question of what is best at this time, and then allow it to come. And I've been in a little prayer group here at Unity where we meet in our different houses, and there's a few of us that have been meeting for years. And this is really what we do, because we put somebody in the circle, and then we sit quietly in meditation for a while, and with a thought in mind, we hold the thought in mind of what is best for this person. And we allow whatever comes into our mind to be there. It might be a visualization. Sometimes we're seeing color. Sometimes we're sensing something within our own bodies. So we allow that to happen. And then when we finish the meditation, we share that. And it's very interesting what comes up. It's sometimes people are visualizing, two people might be visualizing the same thing. And we found that it's very powerful, that it does have an effect. And we hope this it seems to have helped the people that we've put in the circle. So again, it's that place of allowing, and then what comes in is what is of benefit. And then from this place we get to animal communication. And some of you may have heard of Anna Breitenbach. She is a South African woman who is an animal communicator. And there is a wonderful little video, actually it's about an hour long, called The Animal Communicator. I shared it with Heather recently. And I think we had it here a few years ago. And it shows her communicating with baboons in the Western Cape, and how they come to her and sit with her, even the dangerous male that comes up close eventually touches her hand, which is pretty amazing, because some of these baboons can be and they're very strong, and they've been known to break into cars and go after people. So she sits and communicates with them. And then there's this wonderful video. Part of the video is where she's communicating with a black leopard, and he has been taken into this sanctuary for the big cats, where sometimes some of them have been abused. It's a sanctuary where they can have a good life. And he's taken there, but he's a very, very angry animal, very dangerous. And the other cats that have been there have been, quite manageable and even friendly. But they called him Diablo. His name from the other place was Diablo. And he wouldn't even come out of his cage. He would just growl at everybody. And then eventually somebody suggests they bring in Anna to communicate with him. And the keeper of the sanctuary is very, very skeptical. But she comes in and she sits with this black leopard. And you can just see her. She's very quiet, and he's very quiet. And they're just kind of looking at each other. And then she says he's come from a place of a lot of abuse and a lot of hurt. And that he was very worried about a couple of young leopards who were in this other place. And he also said he didn't like the name they gave him, that he wanted a different name. Mm-hmm. And she communicated this to the keeper. And he investigated with the place where this black leopard had come from to find out there had been a couple of young leopards there who had actually gone to another sanctuary. So she was able to communicate with him that the young leopards were safe. And then the keeper of the sanctuary said he agreed to give him another name, and they called him Spirit. Oh. And his whole demeanor changed. And this is pretty amazing. From a very dangerous animal, he started to come out of his enclosure to interact with the other animals and to be much more amenable to people. So it's a very beautiful story. And it shows how, because when she is communicating with an animal, she's allowing pictures to come into her mind. So it's this place of allowing again. For her, I think it's visual. She's getting pictures So this spirit was showing her these 2 young leopards who were abused. And he was then, it must have been other things too, where he's telling her that he doesn't like the name he was given, he wants a new name. So she is open to receiving. And I think, again, this is a big part of imagination, to be open to receiving. And I think there's more people now, after this came out, who are wanting to get into animal communication, which I think is very beautiful. And I use it with my cats when they're outside on summer evenings and want to come in. I send them a picture, maybe with Miss Maisie, it might be her favorite treat, send her a picture of her treat. Or with Mr. Magoo, who likes to snuggle, I show him snuggling. And you know, if I've had a hard time getting them in, eventually it helps get them in, because they can be very naughty this time of year, because I want them in at night. And then I want to take you into something that's really, really out there. And it is how the mind can be trained to imagine. And this is in the Tibetan Buddhism tradition, where there's what they call there are meditational deities, where you're seeing a quality personified as a deity. It might be compassion or whatever. I think I've talked of this before. But you're visualizing this deity. You're visualizing them sometimes within their mandala. And the monks especially are trained to visualize in great detail. And then to visualize the qualities of that deity coming into yourself, to awaken the similar qualities within yourself. So it's a very interesting process, and it takes a lot of visualization. And also it can be used to visualize our negative tendencies, our negative emotions, and to transform those into what they call a nectar, so that negative emotion can be transformed in what they call a Dharma protector. So those negative emotions are transformed into a force that helps us with our meditation and our spiritual practice. And when I say spiritual practice here, sometimes we say think spiritual practice is something we do in a little room and somewhere else, and we just have this meditation space and that's it. But actually, I think our spiritual practice is every day, every moment, with everybody we meet, and with every animal we interact with, and with the earth itself. I think it's something whole, not something separate. It's something that we are full of. And lastly, and I'm going to read this because it's much more complicated than I can hold in my mind, I want to tell you about the training of Tibetan doctors. Let me see if I can do this while holding this thing. So in the Tibetan doctors, Tibetan medicine is pretty interesting. It's very similar to traditional Chinese medicine in some aspects, very similar to Ayurvedic medicine from the Indian tradition, and also has connections with ancient Persian medicine. So it's a very complex process, and apparently it's very, very effective. The Tibetan doctors have been known to be very accurate with their diagnosis, taking a very, very different approach from Western allopathic medicine. So in the training of traditional Tibetan doctors, they're visualizing the medicine Buddha and his mandala as a fundamental practice. It develops diagnostic intuition, invokes deep healing energy, and mentally constructs the holistic union between the natural world and the human body. The visualization is highly structured and progressive through several detailed phases. The palace and surroundings, when they visualize the mandala is like the palace of the deity, and it has 4 doors, east, west, north, and south. And it's actually in 3 dimensions, not 2. We see a picture of a mandala, it's flat, but actually they're visualizing it in 3 dimensions. So they first visualize the medicine Buddha's palace. This serves as an imaginative blueprint of the ideal harmonious universe. The 4 mountains. The palace sits in a pure realm surrounded by 4 mountains. These mountains symbolize the physical environment where restorative waters, minerals, and healing botanicals naturally thrive. The gates. The palace features 4 cardinal gates, each guarded by protectors that represent the shield of compassion required in healthcare. Then there's the lapis lazuli Buddha. At the exact center of the mandala sits the medicine Buddha, who represents the ultimate physician. The body and aura he is visualized as dark blue, the color of lapis lazuli, which is historically prized in Tibetan traditions for its archetypal healing properties. In his left hand he holds a bowl of nectar to cure disease. In his right hand he holds the mirobalan fruit, representing the ultimate universal remedy. And then embodying the deity, medical students do not simply look at the mandala, they learn to transform it through advanced daily yoga. They internalize the mandala, they visualize themselves taking on the form of the medicine Buddha. They imagine brilliant rays of blue healing light radiating from the Buddha's heart center and the mandala, washing through their own bodies and channeling into the patients they are treating. And then the subtle body, the visualization connects directly to the subtle anatomy taught in Tibetan medicine, ensuring internal energy flows directly through the meridians and the chakras. This meditative art helps doctors retain vast medical encyclopedias by viewing the entire physical world as a pharmacy where every plant and mineral can be utilized for healing. To explore further, practitioners can reference the historical medical texts and thangka paintings, and there's specific mantras, etc. And then I wanted to talk about the plants for a moment, because they're visualizing all the plants, and there are 4 mountains. So the North Mountain is seen as it grows plants with sweet and bitter tastes that have cooling properties used to treat hot illnesses. And then the South Mountain is bathed in hot sun. It is filled with plants that have sour and salty tastes with warming properties to treat cold diseases. And then the East Mountain is filled with aromatic, spicy, and deeply nourishing roots that revitalize the nervous system. And the West Mountain produces mineral-rich soils and tonics that build physical strength, tissue quality, and longevity. So there's a whole complex, incredibly complex system of visualization, of imagination here, which is trained. It's not just something that they're doing passively, it's actually training them. And it's training them that when they visit with a patient, apparently a Tibetan doctor will first sit in meditation, and then when he visits with the patient, he's going to sense, open himself to sense their energy, and he will have a series of questions he asks them to kind of establish their body type, etc. And he will really be concentrating very, very much on that inner sense. Also, he takes the pulse, and in both Tibetan and Chinese medicine, it's not just one pulse. There are several pulses, very, very subtle pulses, that would give indications of what's going on in the body. So a very, very complex process, but apparently very, very effective. I had some friends who spent some time in Dharamshala, where His Holiness the Dalai Lama lives, and they were studying meditation. They were also vegetarian at that time. And the guy, there was a couple, he was not doing too well physically. He was going deep into his meditation, but his body was really showing signs of weakness and sort of lightheadedness, and he went to some Western doctors and they couldn't really pin anything down. So he decided to go to a local Tibetan doctor who went through all this process, and he said, "Oh, you have too much lung," which lung is air, wind. There's too much lung energy in your body. You need to eat meat. So he said, having had that diagnosis, they went to a restaurant in the town, and he had a dish of lamb, and he said, his body said, "Thank you." So interesting, it apparently is very effective, and I've never experienced it myself. But I just wanted to share with you some of these ideas of where imagination can take us. It's pretty amazing. It's an invaluable gift. And when we open ourselves up to it, it opens us to the wonders of the universe and the greater gifts that are all there for us. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Marilyn. As our choir comes up, let's go ahead and bless our speaker.
We love you, we bless you, and we appreciate you just the way you are.